This is not a controversial person. This is not a polarizing guy, a divisive person, a firebrand that he's being described as.
Obviously, you well know, Charlie Kirk was assassinated yesterday on the campus of a Utah university. The suspect is still, the location and whereabouts of which are unknown. The FBI had multiple people in custody, had to release both of them. It's kind of a feckless, bumbling, what you would expect when you have Kash Patel and Dan Bongino at the head of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. But there is something that's taking place right now that often happens when someone of note is killed or dies, and that is an absolute and kind of a disgusting whitewashing of their past. I guess it's kind of inborn in us to speak well of the dead, to not have bad things to say. But it's not bad to start talking about what the legacy is of Charlie Kirk, who he was, what he believed, and the things that he said. Yesterday, I started my video talking about his shooting before I knew he had been killed. And I called him a white supremacist, an anti-Semite, and a racist. And it's what he was. And for us to ignore that out of some weird cultural standard it's not fair to history. It's not fair to the people that Charlie Kirk attacked on a daily basis on his program. But that is not what Jesse Waters and the people over at Fox News and largely under the umbrella of conservatism are doing right now. Yesterday on Fox News, in all of the tributes to their compatriot, to their comrade, Charlie Kirk, Fox News did just that, whitewash history, rewrote the history of who he is. And Jesse Waters went as far as to say that Charlie Kirk is not a controversial figure. He's a guy you would invite to the barbecue. He was a good, righteous, mighty Christian man. A family man. That is very likely true. Charlie Kirk probably loved and adored his wife and children. His white wife and children. We'll get to some of his past and some of the receipts that I'm absolutely going to bring because we're not going to shy away from the truth. But here is Jesse Waters on Fox News yesterday really doing an effort to try to do just that and rewrite the history.
This is a man who touched an entire generation of Americans and electrified them and made them patriots. And this is not a controversial person. This is not a polarizing guy, a divisive person, a firebrand that he's being described as in the media. This is like a guy that you have a barbecue with at your summer house. This is the kind of guy, if you came back with your daughter, you'd say, thank God, we got a good one. He's a great athlete. He's a great person. He's a great Christian. You see his family out there. He had his kids not facing the photos because he wanted to protect them, because he knew how evil people were. So when he goes out to these college campuses, he's not provoking anybody. He's like Socrates.
Not a polarizing guy. Not a divisive person. Not a firebrand that he's being described as in the media. This guy, barbecue guy. Great athlete, great person, great Christian. Of course, they got to mention his religion. You see his family out there. And again, look, I'm not going to take it away from him. He probably loved and doted on his family. Sure. But he was not this altruistic lover of humanity. He was not someone who shied away from trafficking in controversy or even talk of violence in politics. It's a tweet from 2015. Long ago, 10 years ago. Hashtag say something nice about Hillary. She dodges sniper fire. Here, another element of him leaning into political violence is him calling for some patriot to bail out of jail the man who attacked Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul Pelosi, with a hammer, leaving him with permanent injuries. Watch this.
I mean, I'm looking at Politico.com. I'm looking at the New York Times. I'm looking at all these places, and there's a little bit of mention here. For example, Politico says top Republicans reject any link between GOP rhetoric and Paul Pelosi assault. Of course you should reject any link. Why is the Republican Party, why is the conservative movement to blame for gay schizophrenic nudists that are hemp jewelry makers breaking into somebody's home, or maybe not breaking into somebody's home? Why are we to blame for that exactly? And why is he still in jail? Why has he not been bailed out? By the way, if some amazing patriot out there in San Francisco or the Bay Area wants to really be a midterm hero, someone should go and bail this guy out. I bet his bail's like $30,000 or $40,000. Bail him out and then go ask him some questions. I wonder what his bail is. They're going after him with attempted murder, political assassination, all this sort of stuff. I'm not qualifying it. I think it's awful. It's not right. But why is it that in Chicago, you're able to commit murder and be out the next day? Why is it that you're able to trespass, second-degree murder, arson, threat of public official, cashless bail? This happens all over San Francisco, but if you go after the Pelosi's, oh, you're let out immediately.
We don't have to just talk about his ideas about political violence and the things that he said and the emotions that he stoked. We can talk about his racism, his anti-Semitism, his idea that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was a mistake, that equality between black people and white people is a mistake. Watch this little mashup that I found.
We note in our piece that Kirk describes King as, quote, a bad guy. It's true. And Kirk's self-described very, very radical view that the country made a mistake when it passed the Civil Rights Act. Also true. As we note in the piece, Kirk has previously described Kirk as a hero and a civil rights icon. It's true. I used to be wrong. What inspired Kirk to shift his view on MLK? Why does Kirk think that MLK is a bad guy? When Kirk says that MLK says, quote, one good thing he didn't believe, what does he mean by that? Why does Kirk believe passing the Civil Rights Act was a mistake? Now, again, apparently they don't listen to the show because we do that at least once a week, right? Once a week we talk about why the Civil Rights Act was a mistake. Yeah, and so it's very simple. So how do you love somebody? You love them so much to correct their error. Yeah. And so let's just, take the pride conversation out because people think it's an identification, which it's not. It's just sexual behavior. But it's if you meet an alcoholic or you meet a drug addict, do you affirm their struggle? No. You say, you're better than this. Let's get you free from that. Let's get you free from that activity. Now, we don't know what part Elon is saying is the actual truth. So let's go through this. Again, it's double negatives and misuse of the word disinterested. It's a strange tweet that Elon pinpointed on here. But the first part is absolutely true. Let's go to this. Jewish communities have been pushing the exact kind of hatred against whites that they claim to want people to stop using against them. Now, I don't like generalizations. Not every Jewish person believes that. But it is true, the Anti-Defamation League was part and parcel with Black Lives Matter. It is true that some of the largest financiers of left-wing, anti-white causes have been Jewish Americans. They went all in on woke, and it wasn't just ADL. It was some of the top Jewish organizations in the country that have done that. In fact, we have seen this with the recent retreat of Jewish donations that are no longer going to be administered to colleges, right? Mark Rowan, Leon Kopperman. Can we get that full list? It's very powerful. The part of so that's totally true. And by the way, Tucker Carlson reinforces this. So I'm going to it was quite a day on the internet. Tucker Carlson.
Not controversial, right? That's not controversial. That's not polarizing. That's not divisive. Those are just standard white supremacist ideas. The ideas and philosophies and ideologies of a racist, of a white Christian nationalist, of an anti-Semite. And it's who Charlie Kirk was. It's not going to be fair to us It's not going to be fair to our culture and our society. It's not going to be fair to the truth if we act as though he wasn't what he was. Now, all of the things I've said, even yesterday when I bemoaned political violence, when I condemned the shooting and then ultimately the killing of Charlie Kirk, none of this takes away from the fact that he shouldn't have been murdered. Here he is. We'll leave it with this. This is Charlie Kirk talking about how Sheila Jackson Lee and Michelle Obama and let me get the names right, Joy-Ann Reid and Ketanji Brown Jackson's, they stole their positions. Notice the language dealing with black women, black people. They stole their positions of influence from someone more deserving because they don't have the brain power. They're too stupid and black to have accomplished anything on their merit because of affirmative action. Again, not polarizing, not controversial, not divisive, according to Jesse Waters.
Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously. Play cut 52.
But I rise today as a clear recipient of affirmative action, and particularly in higher education. I may have been admitted on affirmative action, both in terms of being a woman and a woman of color, but I can declare that I did not graduate on affirmative action. This is my personal story.
I hear because of action affirmative. She can't even say that. We know. It's very obvious to us that you were not smart enough to be able to get in on your own. I couldn't make it on my own, so I needed to take opportunities from someone more deserving. You know, this is how arrogant Joy Reid and Ketanji Brown Jackson and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee are. They're so narcissistic, they think this is persuasive. They think we're like, oh, of course. That's why we need affirmative action, because you have impressed us with your brilliance. Of course. Oh no, imagine the world without Joy Reid. Imagine the world without Sheila Jackson Lee or Michelle Obama or Ketanji Brown Jackson. They think this is persuasive. They think as they kind of now reveal that I'm only here because of anti-white, anti-Asian forced discrimination policies that turned me into a bitter, resentful activist that hates white people, honestly.
So I just wanted to start the day really trying to correct the record up front, because this is the narrative that's going to be beaten. This is the drum that's going to be struck over the course of weeks and months ahead. They're going to try to rewrite who he was, what he stood for, and what he promoted. Does he deserve, did he deserve assassination? No. That makes all of us poorer. Political violence hurts all of us. When you take things beyond rhetoric and it becomes physical, when it becomes violent, when you start throwing rounds downrange, nobody wins.
For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals.
Donald Trump delivered an address to the nation yesterday from behind the Resolute desk in the Oval Office of the White House in honor of, or as some kind of announcement, a tribute to Charlie Kirk, the racist, anti-Semitic, white supremacist, white nationalist. It's what he was. We're not going to shy away from the facts. And in this speech from Donald Trump, just over 4 minutes long, he challenged those who would demonize people of different beliefs in a mark of regular hypocrisy for Donald Trump. especially related to political violence itself. When the Gretchen Whitmer kidnap plot happened, Donald Trump not only ignored it for so long, he also called into question the legitimacy of it, that it was a fake thing. It's a hoax, like everything else. The kidnap plot against Nancy Pelosi that ended up being a hammer attack on her husband's head, leaving him permanently with some condition of traumatic brain injury, Donald Trump mocked that. Ignored it, certainly didn't wish them well, certainly didn't try to ease the tensions in the country. Donald Trump dispatched an angry, violent, armed white supremacist mob to the United States Capitol to attempt to overthrow the United States government. A violent scene, if there ever was one, in the name of politics. And when you attempt to influence politics through violence or the threat of violence, what is that called? What is that called? Terrorism. Donald Trump engaged in domestic terrorism. And then just a couple of months ago, when Melissa Hortman and her husband were assassinated at the hands of a longtime evangelical right-wing nutjob conservative, Donald Trump said nothing. Nothing. And yet, within moments of Charlie Kirk being assassinated, the president of the United States of America, who is responsible for everything I just mentioned, got behind the desk in the Oval Office and made this address. I'm not going to play the whole 4 minutes. We're just going to play the part that I want to talk about. But listen to this and remember Donald Trump's past and who he is and what he has done and what he has said and what he has wrought upon this nation.
It's a long past time for all Americans and the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are the tragic consequence of demonizing those with whom you disagree day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible. For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today, and it must stop right now. My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it, as well as those who go after our judges, law enforcement officials, and everyone else who brings order to our country. From the attack on my life in Butler, Pennsylvania last year, which killed a husband and father, to the attacks on ICE agents, to the vicious murder of a healthcare executive in the streets of New York, to the shooting of House Majority Leader Steve Scalise and 3 others, radical left political violence has hurt too many innocent people and taken too many lives. Tonight, I ask all Americans to commit themselves to the American values for which Charlie Kirk lived and died.
First and foremost, I want to point out that he is absolutely setting the stage to go after Democrats, to go after liberals, to go after leftists, to go after his political opponents. My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it, as well as those who go after our judges. Donald Trump is the one who goes after judges, who drags judges' families' names into this. There's an uptick in threats against federal judges who rule against Donald Trump now, more than there's ever have been in the history of our country. At his behest, at his hand. This is all just lip service and hypocrisy and projection on the part of Donald Trump. When he says, it's long past time for all Americans and the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are the tragic consequence of demonizing those with whom you disagree? We're going to get to a couple clips, but before we do, why don't I just read you his Memorial Day message, speaking of demonizing those with whom we disagree. This is on May 26th, this Memorial Day. Happy Memorial Day to all, says the President of the United States, including the scum that spent the last 4 years trying to destroy our country through warped, radical left minds. Does that smack of demonizing those with whom you disagree? Certainly does to me. Of course, he took the moment to make it about himself, from the attack on my life in Butler, Pennsylvania last year, which killed husband and father, to the attacks on ICE agents. The attack on you in Butler, Pennsylvania was delivered to you by a registered Republican, Donald Trump. That young man was not a liberal by any account. But they're going to try to rewrite history in a way to make it that way, to justify, to provide some kind of framework for going after their political opponents with violence, with arrest, with the force and weight of the United States government. Radical left political violence has hurt too many innocent people and taken too many lives, has it? In recent years, the gravest threat of domestic political violence and extremism and terror the FBI announced was from right-wing groups. And tonight, he asks all Americans to commit themselves to the American values for which Charlie Kirk lived and died. I would point you to my previous statements about what he stood for in the furious attempt to rewrite and whitewash history about who Charlie Kirk was and what he has said and what he has done. Donald Trump, let's get to just a few brief examples. Look, I didn't have to go deep. We're not even going to the first term. We're not even leaving 2025. We could just go back to June 25th, 2025, when Donald Trump was at the NATO summit and was explaining to the crowd and to a journalist that CNN and NBC and the New York Times were scum.
Let me just tell you, you and NBC, fake news, which is one of the worst, and CNN, New York Times, are all bad. They're sick. There's something wrong with them. But you know what? You should be praising those people instead of trying to find something. By trying to go and get me, you're hurting those people. They were devastated. You know, I got a call from Missouri, great state, that I won 3 times by a lot. And I got a call that the pilots and the people on the plane were devastated because they were trying to minimize the attack. And they all said it was hit. But we don't think it was really maybe hit that badly. And they were devastated. They put their lives on the line, and then they have, and I'm not referring to you, but real scum come out and write reports that are as negative as they could possibly be. It should be the opposite. You should make them heroes and heroines.
All bad, sick, real scum, he says. What was it he said about demonizing those with whom you disagree? Yeah. Let's go back to July 11th, the Texas floods, when a reporter did her job and asked the question, hey, look, a lot of people who lost their daughters, their baby girls and baby boys in this flood are concerned about lack of notice, lack of announcements, lack of alert, lack of emergency response relative to this flood. What do you have to say to those families about their concerns? And what did he do? He called her a sick and evil person.
Several families we've heard from are obviously upset because they say that those warnings, those alerts didn't go out in time, and they also say that people could have been saved. What do you say to those families?
Well, I think everyone did an incredible job under the circumstances. This was, I guess Christie said, a 1 in 500, 1 in 1,000 years. And I just have admiration for the job that everybody did. There was just admiration. The only bad person would ask a question like that, to be honest with you. I don't know who you are, but only a very evil person would ask a question like that.
Only a bad person, only a very evil person would ask that question. Demonizing people for beliefs they have that are not yours. And then finally, let's end with this. I've got a couple others, but let's end with this. This is just from July 14th. At a faith luncheon, a meeting of religious individuals in the White House, where Donald Trump invoked evil again about people on the other side and what he's battling, invoking both God on his side and the holiness, the righteousness, the purity of his motives, and the evil and darkness of people who believe differently than him, demonizing them.
But I hate to say it, but we're going to be working together to protect our children, and with the grace of God and blessing of providence, we will lead our country to heights that it's never seen before. I think we're going to be more successful in many ways, but I think we're going to be more successful than we've ever been. And I do think this, if we didn't catch it, if we would have lost this election, our country was finished. I think it was, and we were run by incompetent people. We were run by an auto pen that nobody knows who used it. I think it's one of the biggest scandals in the history of our country. We were run by an auto pen. Nobody has any idea who used it, including Biden. He doesn't know. He saw that interview yesterday. He knew nothing. So it's a very terrible, we're against an evil group of people, and they're very smart, very smart. He's not, but they are. They took over the Oval Office. They actually took over the Oval Office. We can never let a thing like that happen again.
At a White House faith luncheon, again on July 14th, if you want to look up that date and what it was. So they can save their crocodile tears about political violence and demonizing people of different views. The violence in this country comes from largely the right. The violent rhetoric largely comes from the right. And at this point, we have no idea who the shooter is and what the shooter's motivations were, because the FBI is run by a couple of clowns who have never done the job and don't know how to do it, and they are botching this investigation. Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, appointed by Donald Trump, confirmed by a Republican Senate.
And we're watching what they're saying on television, and who's saying what? The politicians, the media, and all of these rats out there.
Something very curious in the wake of Charlie Kirk's death yesterday that I'm noticing online, that I'm sure you've noticed if you've taken a break to peruse Twitter or anywhere on social media, is that when there is political violence against a left individual, a liberal, a Democrat, Democrats are outraged and Republicans are silent or gleeful. And when there's political violence against a Republican or a conservative, Democrats are outraged and Republicans are outraged, but also stoke violence against Democrats. And that's exactly what's happening right now, except at a degree I don't think I've ever seen in the wake of something like what happened yesterday. It's different. It is very different. Yesterday, I did the video about Charlie Kirk's shooting before he was pronounced dead. And I read several tweets from governors, from Pritzker and Newsom and David Pachman and other prominent online thinkers who are liberal or Democrat. And all of them, including myself, condemned political violence. All of them. I have not seen one single Democrat of note anywhere say anything other than, this must stop. This is outrageous and deplorable and disgusting and just outright condemnation. You may have seen some rando on Twitter act like an asshole about it, act gleeful about it, not really fully thinking through what the stakes are for the country and our future. But prominent people of note are not doing that. Not so on the right. I did run across this tweet from Adam Swartz, who is apparently a political thinker in Great Britain. And he gave his thoughts from across the pond about what he's witnessing online relative to what I just spoke about. I'm going to read you 2 tweets, and then we're going to get into exactly what is taking place over on Fox News and across the conservative zeitgeist of media, of them stoking the rank and file Republicans to violence, to fury, to anger, to apoplectic rage. This is Adam Swartz. My observations from the last few hours of monitoring U.S. social media is that Democrats are universally denouncing political violence and calling for calm, while MAGA are escalating rhetoric and lusting for retribution against broad categories of people they identify as their enemies. He followed it up with this: the escalatory potential of political violence is why this should be a moment of U.S. political unity where left and right call for calm. Deliberately incendiary MAGA responses show that they are not a peaceful movement operating under the normal civic values of the United States Constitution. I read this because this is far more poignantly and intelligently stated than I could have mustered. Like, I'm a bombastic guy. I'm a name caller, and all that's fine. I get called names. That's fine. That's fine. It's absolutely fine. But I don't call for violence. You will not find me, videos of me, calling for violence, political violence. I made a joke a few years ago about having a charity boxing match with Tucker Carlson where I challenged him. But that's a charity boxing match inside of a ring with a referee and rules and boxing gloves. That's not a shooter on a roof targeting with a high-powered, high-caliber long rifle a political opponent. That's not inciting an insurrection and an attempted overthrow of the United States government in order to end democracy in America. That's not celebrating the hammer attack on the head of the former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi. It's not that. Political violence is wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong. Because it leads us to inflamed passions that sometimes get out of control. When synergies collect and people lose it. And that is exactly what the intent of what I'm getting ready to show you here is. We're going to start with Jesse Waters, who's literally talking about revenge. He's literally talking about what we're going to do. We're going to avenge him. He's talking in this way, not that he's going to do anything. The thin-armed, soft-skinned Jesse Waters, he's not going to deliver a blow. He's not going to go to war. He's not going to commit violence, but he will sure as convince some yokel, some unwashed, low-information Fox News rube to do it in his name. And then he'll deny, what? No, I didn't do that. I didn't say that. Mr. Multimillionaire, Mr. Child of Privilege. And that is exactly what they want. They want to stir the pot so much that the rank and file lose it and start acting out. They want chaos in the streets. They want violence in the United States. They want rivers of blood. Watch this first clip from Jesse Waters, and then we'll move on to his little buddy, Greg Gutfeld.
This hits differently because Charlie was one of us. And Trump gets hit in the ear. Charlie gets shot dead. They came after Kavanaugh with a rifle to his neighborhood. They went after Musk's cars. They just shot 2 Jews outside the embassy. Think about it. Scalise got shot, barely survived. It's happening. You got trans shooters. You got riots in LA. They are at war with us. Whether we want to accept it or not, they are at war with us. And what are we going to do about it? How much political violence are we going to tolerate? And that's the question we're just going to have to ask ourselves. Now, Charlie would want us to put as much pressure on these people as possible. Dana nailed it. This is unacceptable and has to stop. And it has to stop now. And everybody's accountable. And we're watching what they're saying on television and who's saying what. The politicians, the media, and all of these rats out there. This can never happen again. It ends now. Greg's right again. This is a turning point, and we know which direction we're going.
Starts off nice, doesn't it? This hits differently because Charlie was one of us. Just giving up the whole game, Jesse Waters. Didn't give a single f*** when Melissa Hortman was assassinated at the hands of a Republican gunman. No, but this hits differently because Charlie was also a racist. He was also a white supremacist. He was also a Republican. That's why it's different this time. And then do you notice the vagary of his language? They came after Kavanaugh. A mentally disturbed individual did approach Kavanaugh's house, Brett Kavanaugh, with a weapon, and then called the cops on himself because he was disturbed. That's why he was there. He was disturbed and found clarity enough to call the cops on himself. He wasn't caught by the authorities, by the armed agents of the state who guard the Supreme Court justice. He called the cops on himself. And it's not they. Who's this they? This nebulous they, this dangerous, shadowy they. Who are you talking about? Jesse Waters? They went after Musk's cars. They just shot 2 Jews outside the embassy. They did this. Do you hear this, Fox News viewers? They might be coming for you next. It's dangerous. It's happening, he says. We've got trans shooters. It is remarkable to me with the literal thousand upon thousands upon thousands of mass shootings we've had in this country at the hands of white men, predominantly, overwhelmingly white men, white boys, white males, thousands, tens of thousands maybe. I don't know the number is so astronomical, I don't know the number. But we've had, of all the tens of thousands of mass shootings, there's been 5 transgender people, so now that's the threat. It's all to stoke fear, to otherize marginalized communities so innocent trans Americans will be under threat of violence and death, torture, and murder. Not at Jesse Waters' hands. He'll be blameless. He's not going to do the violence himself. We'll get to who will, the types that will. They are at war with us, he says. They are at war with us, he repeats. How much political violence are we going to tolerate, he says, rallying the troops. And we're watching what they're saying on television. And who's saying what? This is a threat. We're watching. We're seeing who's saying what they're saying. The politicians and the media and all of those rats out there. They're watching. They're listening. This is a turning point, Jesse Waters says. And we know which direction we're going. Is that right, Jesse Waters? Just another fucking mouthy coward whose words have import, whose words will influence radicals, people already on the edge, who don't know the facts, who are steeped in conspiratorial thinking that is delivered to them, spoon-fed to them by Fox News. Again, Jesse Waters' little buddy, Greg Gutfeld, he had this little add-on to the screed.
Yeah, I know that it's somewhat object of mockery to say thoughts and prayers, but thoughts and prayers for his family. They need it from all of us. And Jesse's right. If they could do this, they are capable of anything. I think that was the message. I believe that was the message. It's really hard to radicalize Republicans.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we're not the radical type. But if you thought that you were going to shut a movement down, you're going to get a rude awakening. You woke us the fuck up.
And we will.
Again, with the vagary. If they could do this, they are capable of anything. We don't even know if it was one shooter or multiple people. We don't know the motivations of this individual. We don't know. Look, this could easily be some unhinged QAnon nut who is angry that Charlie Kirk backed away from trying to get the Epstein files released. It's just as logical and reasonable that that could be the case. This person, I'm assuming man, could be a liberal, could be someone with leftist ideologies. It could be, but it could just as easily be the other side. If you thought that you were going to shut a movement down, you're going to get a rude awakening. You woke us the fuck up, says little Greg Gutfeld, who's never punched or been punched ever. Never delivered violence or been a victim of violence ever. Yet he's willing to stoke the passions of those who will deliver violence. I've got some others here. Maybe I'll mix this up in another video. Steve Bannon talking about we have not yet begun to fight, talking about war. Sean Hannity acting as though it's Democrats. Nancy Mace on the attention tour, the perpetual attention tour, acting as though Democrats have blood on their hands. This is the Democrats' fault. But then when asked, anyway, maybe I will do that. I would love your opinion on this. This is all meant, to wrap it up, is absolutely meant in no uncertain terms to stoke the passions of the rank and file in the Republican Party. I'd love your opinion on this. Let's have a conversation in the comments wherever you're watching this video. You can also call the voicemail line 714-576-4054. And you can email me daily@dollemore.com. I love and appreciate you very much. No good will come from this. That's my prediction.
400 million plus firearms in this country, and they don't belong to the left, bro.
So as I just got done talking about Jesse Waters and Greg Gutfeld and Sean Hannity and Steve Bannon and all of these people who are now stoking violence that they will never commit, they are trying to convince the unwashed, low information, rank and file conservative to take action, stoking in them fear and paranoia about the war that we are currently in. The war that is being put upon them, waged against them by the media, Democrats. And unfortunately, in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination, it is working. I've got 4 videos here, very brief, 45 seconds or so each, from TikTok and Twitter, of people who are filled with rage, with violence, with seething hatred toward people who believe that we should have Medicare for all, who believe that we should have sensible gun laws that may have prevented the assassination of Charlie Kirk. People who believe in equality, in equity, in inclusion, in diversity, who believe in the ideals often enshrined in the Constitution: due process, equality under the law, equal protection under the law. These ideals that are at the forefront, the foundational principles of a liberal democracy. But the non-controversial, non-polarizing, non-divisive Charlie Kirk was killed at the hands of a madman. And now the country must burn because of this imaginary war. Let me start with Heavy 4900 on TikTok. And look, but not a content warning, but brace yourself. This is going to get heavy. This is going to, I want to warn you of what is likely to come at some point, somewhere in this country. This isn't over. The peak has not been reached yet. The acme of ridiculous violence at the hands of some conservative isn't over. Watch Heavy 4900 on TikTok.
I hope when this is all over, you remember who fired first. You've tried to kill the president twice, and now you've assassinated man for talking. You don't really want to do this, okay? 400 million plus firearms in this country, and they don't belong to the left, bro. Yeah. If you think it's okay to murder someone because of their opinion, you get what's coming to you. You and yours.
First of all, who are you talking to, buddy? You hope when all of this is over that we remember who fired first? We don't even know who fired in the first place. No information is had. No information do we know. You have tried to kill the president twice. Heavy 4900 probably isn't aware, because of the vacuum of information in conspiracy land that is the Republican Party, that both assassination attempts on Donald Trump, one wasn't even an attempt, it was just a guy laying in the bushes. The other one was a fired weapon, were from Republicans. The kid in Butler, Pennsylvania was a Republican, a registered Republican, not some Antifa terrorist. And they don't belong to the left, the 400 plus million firearms. Do you really want to do this? Do you think that I don't own weapons, firearms? Do you not think I am proficient in the use of those aforementioned weapons of war? Sir, I spent years in the United States Marine Corps and am more than proficient. It's the first time I've talked about being a firearm owner. Out of the thousands and thousands and thousands of YouTube videos that I have posted. Because it's immaterial. It's irrelevant. I don't traffic in speaking about threats of political violence and my using my weapons to achieve my political goals. This is what the Jesse Waters of our world want. The Greg Gutfelds, the Steve Bannons, the Donald Trumps. This is what they want. So they can clamp down on civil liberties. Let's move on to Wes Watson. I believe he's also from TikTok.
Charlie Kirk was just shot in the fucking neck at Utah University, somewhere in fucking Utah at one of his events. And I am directly attributing this to all these fucking media personalities and these politicians like Tim Walz getting on the fucking TV and saying, well, I sure do hope he dies today. I sure hope he dies. Y'all are the fucking reason this shit is happening, you evil motherfuckers. Everything that they say Trump is, they are. Trump's violent, they're fucking violent. Trump's hateful, they're fucking hateful. Trump's a fascist, they're literally shooting people who don't agree with them. Who don't agree that children should be murdered in fucking droves and that men should be able to watch fucking women take a piss. And fucking grown-ass men should be able to have peeping Tom shows in front of elementary school fucking kids.
So Wes here is attributing all of this all of this to these fucking media personalities and these politicians like Tim Walz getting on TV and saying, well, I sure hope he dies today. Does this rube actually believe, question, do you think this guy really believes that Tim Walz, the loving, kind, generous, decent Tim Walz, actually got on TV, stood in front of a camera with a microphone in front of his face and said, I hope Charlie Kirk dies as a result of his injuries? That's psychotic. That is batshit. That did not happen. The only place that happened is in the fever dream of Wes Watson. And then again, all of the vagary of language. Everything that they say Trump is, they are. They're fucking violent. They say Trump's hateful. They're hateful. They're literally shooting people who don't agree with them. They? Who's they, Wes? Who's they? Do you know the identity of the shooter? If you do, I would advise you to get onto Twitter and tweet at FBI. Call the FBI tip line and give them the information that you're withholding from us about this nebulous they that you know so much about. This is what Fox News wants more than anything. Because let me tell you, the difference between revenues generated on September 9th, they pale in comparison to those of September 10th and September 11th. Best thing that ever happened to Fox News revenue-wise is something like this. Items like this. Incidences like this. It's not just heavy 4900 or Wes Watson 15. Here's American Flip 87 from Twitter.
This video's in regards to Charlie Kirk. And this video's for the fucking liberals. It's war, motherfuckers. We're coming for you. We're coming for you. And spare me your fucking self-righteous bullshit lectures. I don't give a fuck. We're coming for you.
Impassioned. We're at war, motherfuckers, he says, wearing his Smith & Wesson t-shirt. We're coming for you, the fucking liberals. Language you've never... Look, again, bombastic guy. Rhetorical bomb thrower. Not going to stop. It's who I am. It's the Marine in me. But you've never heard me talk like this. As bombastic and aggressive as I am, you've never heard me say, we're coming for you. This is war. I've never spoken like Tim Pool. Civil war on the tip of his tongue at every moment. Talking about violence that he will never deliver. This is what they want. We'll end with this other guy who is, this is a guy I feel very bad for. He's not leveling threats, but he is out of his tree with rage, with despair over the shooting of Charlie Kirk. Looking for someone to blame. Talking about jumping in his car and driving down to Provo. For what reason, I don't know. Watch this.
This is such bullshit. I've never been so pissed in my whole life. And this murder Charlie Kirk right here in Utah. I'm so freaking pissed right now. This is bullshit. I just saw blood squirting out of his neck. I love that guy. He would have been our next president. I am so pissed right now. Why do they always come with fucking violence? Gosh damn it. Use your freaking words as they're talking to you people. Who shot Charlie Kirk? I'm driving down to Provo right now. I'm so pissed. Damn it.
Again, the reason I included this, because I feel bad for this guy. From the video you just watched, this is heartbreaking to me. but he's using the same language. They murdered Charlie Kirk right here in Utah. They did it. They. Who's the they? We don't even know who the gunman was. We don't even know the motivations of the gunman. And yet it's they. It's the shadowy network of liberals. Even Donald Trump giving his speech talking about how the groups that fund them. Like, what are they talking about? All of this is intended to ratchet up fear and violence and restrictions on civil liberties. The same people who got violent during COVID because they were recommended to wear masks to protect vulnerable populations, to stop and slow the spread of a deadly virus. And they flipped out. They armed themselves and went to their state capitals. These are the same people who are going to be responsible for the infliction of restrictions of civil liberties again, because Donald Trump is champing at the bit to declare martial law, to flex his Article 2 that tells him he can do anything he wants. And as much as they fly their Gadsden flags, don't tread on me, they yearn with an almost erotic motivation to have their necks tread upon, stepped upon by the heavy boot of the United States government. I hope you're happy, Charlie Kirk. Is this what you want? Probably. Your hands will not be dirty. They will have metaphorical blood on them. But when the shoe is on the other foot and Democrats are the victims of violence, they're gleeful. Or at the very, very least, they're silent. One thing that we have absolutely learned unequivocally with no question in mind is about what motivates Republicans in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination, what they prize, what they find important, whose lives they believe are important, are worthy of recognition or memorializing. We're going to be talking about Mike Lee in this. We're going to be talking about Don Jr. in this. We're going to be talking about Laura Loomer in this. But let's start with Mike Lee. You'll remember just a couple of months ago when Melissa Hortman and her husband, politicians in Minnesota, were assassinated at the hands of a right-wing evangelical Christian. The alleged shooter, Mr. Belter. And Mike Lee, what was the tweet he put out? I was going to show this afterward, but let's just put it up now. Nightmare on Wall Street, as he mocks the incident that took the lives of two human beings and their dog. Mike Lee, Senator Mike Lee from Utah. That wasn't good enough. He followed it up with this zinger. This is what happens when Marxists don't get their way. Again, lying, like in every other case that violence happens, lying that the shooter, the right-wing, lifelong Republican, evangelical Christian missionary, was a Marxist. Well, when the violence came home to Utah, Mike Lee wasn't sending out snarky tweets, making jokes about nightmare on Orem Street, nightmare on Kirk Street. None of that from Mike Lee. Because Mike Lee is a lying, hypocritical clown, a heartless, fake Christian. And I don't mean fake because he's a Mormon and that's not a real Christian religion. I mean fake. Because now it's all thoughts and prayers, my brother, Charlie Kirk, thoughts and prayers. Now it's teary responses. Admonitions for calm. Oh, where was all that when it was a Democrat, Mike Lee? He tweeted this This is Mike Lee Assassination Charlie Kirk edition. I am tracking the situation in Utah Valley University closely. Please join me in praying for Charlie Kirk and the students gathered there. A little different sentiment from the senator from Utah. I wonder why that would be. He was in the hallway being asked questions about this, and I want you to see his face and the tender emotions that he's feeling, the deep sorrow that he has. On the verge of tears, Mike Lee is. It's not when Marxists get their way, but it's a little different than that. Watch this.
How this should be remembered. He had boundless energy, he had great love for his country, whether you agree with Charlie Kirk or not. Go on record saying I agree with him. Sure, I could identify, if I went through enough things, some obscure issue where we didn't agree, but I can't think of one right now. But whether you agree with him or not, you have to respect his boundless energy, his commitment to making the world a better place. Genuine decency and respect that he showed to other people, even while disagreeing with them, even while they were yelling at him. I don't think I can remember ever seeing him respond back to hatred with hate, or with anything other than respect. And he had the ability to explain complex concepts to people in very simple, understandable terms, even people who hadn't historically been involved in politics or historically thought of themselves as conservatives or one way or another. And I think that's his legacy. And it's a legacy that's been cut far too short. My heart just grieves for Erica and for Charlie and Erica's children, and all the people who loved him, who were many.
Where was that range of emotions for Melissa Hortman and her husband? Or when any other right-wing political violence came to bear on the heads of the nation? Mike Lee, where was that? The son of the president, same kind of deal. I'm not going to read this entire long tweet. We'll just give you a couple of sentences. But he had this to say: "This isn't my strong suit, and I don't even know how to begin to put into words the loss I'm feeling right now over the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Charlie wasn't just a friend. He was like a little brother to me and to millions of people around the world. He was a true inspiration. He was one of the most courageous, principled men I've ever known, and he lived every day with purpose. His faith in God was unshakable. His love for Erica was inspiring. And the way he adored and cared for his two beautiful kids showed the kind of man he truly was. Charlie dedicated his life to something bigger than himself. He fought tirelessly for this country, for the values that make America great." Don Jr. probably believes that. What I'm saying is, I believe that to be genuine from Don Jr. So was it genuine when he posted this in response to a politically motivated attack? "I got my Paul Pelosi Halloween costume ready." Paul Pelosi has permanent traumatic brain injury, celebrated by the president's son, Donald Trump Jr. He's wrought with emotion over his team, but celebrates gleefully when an octogenarian is attacked by an unhinged, conspiracy-driven psycho in his home. These people aren't to be taken seriously. They're hypocrites. Chief hypocrite, maybe, Laura Loomer. She had this to say about Charlie Kirk's assassination. "Charlie Kirk's death will not be in vain." A little ominous. "I will be spending my night making everyone I find online who celebrates his death famous with a capital F for some reason. So prepare to have your whole future professional aspirations ruined if you are sick enough to celebrate his death. I'm going to make sure you wish you were never opened your mouth. These people need to be condemned in society, and there must never be a place for these people to gather without facing the shame of their behavior. Is that right? Is that right? What was it you said in the wake of a politically motivated attack, Laura Loomer? This little New York Post article, Dear Abby, my wife keeps trying to have sex with me. I can't take it anymore. Was this written by Nancy Pelosi's husband before the hammer attack? Maybe you're right. Maybe these people, meaning you, Laura Loomer, need to be condemned in our society, and there must never be a place for these people, you, Laura Loomer, to gather without facing the shame of their behavior. Now, this isn't a politically motivated attack, but it's certainly a touchstone of violence in our culture, where she said, congratulations to George Floyd on being 5 years sober. And yet it strains credulity for her to make this vacuous, empty, hypocritical statement about ruining people's lives who celebrate tragedy, who celebrate political violence. And the reason I bring up Laura Loomer, somebody like, she's just a troll, who cares what she says? She's got the ear of Donald Trump. People have lost their jobs in the military, in our intelligence infrastructure, in the federal government, at the behest of, at the word, on the charge of Laura Loomer, who is in the ear of our idiot president of the United States. So, look, I don't know what the overarching motivation of this particular set of thoughts is, but let me tell you, Mike Lee is not to be taken seriously. Should he be sad because someone he knows and loves died? Yes. Yes. Should Charlie Kirk have been shot? No, certainly not. I've condemned it over and over and over and over because it's wrong. It's self-evidently counterproductive. But when the shoe is on the other foot and Democrats are the victims of violence, when the other side is subject to assassination, they're gleeful. Or at the very, very least, they're silent about it. They're not serious, but they are seriously dangerous because there are people who follow at their whim, are motivated by their words, are impassioned by their conspiracies and their lies.
You can't stop with these sort of awful thoughts you have and then saying these awful words and not expect awful actions to take place.
Matt.
And that's the unfortunate environment we're in.
In all of the commentary that was provided yesterday in the wake of the assassination of Charlie Kirk, one commentator got fired from MSNBC. And I want to play the offensive. I don't know how offensive it is. I think there's one or two words that I might have called into question, but I don't know that it rises to the level of being fired. And my caution here is this, that liberal outlets like MSNBC, it's certainly a liberal outlet. Let's cool our jets a little bit before we start knee-jerk firing anybody who says anything with any validity or truth at all in it, in this weird cultural effort to try to whitewash the legacy of Charlie Kirk, who was a racist, anti-Semitic, white supremacist. It's what he was. Black women aren't smart enough. They don't have the brain power to process things in any position they have. Anytime he sees a black woman pilot, he's afraid because she's not qualified. She stole, like black people do. She stole that job from a white pilot, a white man pilot. He advocated girls not go to college, but instead get married, start a family. He's one of these types that doesn't want women to vote. Lying about the origins of our governmental founding documents, that they are based literally directly on Deuteronomy. It's just a screed of conspiracies and lies and racism and hate, vitriol and divisiveness from Charlie Kirk. Does he deserve to die because of it? No. I'll say it again and again and again and again. But let's not try to make him into some kind of a saint. He was not that. He was a polarizing, destructive figure in our culture, in our country. Here's what Matthew Dowd said that got him fired yesterday, and then we're going to read a statement from the president of MSNBC.
I'm going to bring you in on this. Talk to me about the environment. The reports of exactly what happened are not confirmed yet. But talk to me about the environment in which a shooting like this happens.
Yeah, and again, emphasize what you just emphasized. We don't know any of the full details of this. That we don't know if this was a supporter shooting their gun off in celebration, or so we have no idea about this. But following up what was just said, he's been one of the most divisive, especially divisive younger figures in this, who is constantly sort of pushing this sort of hate speech or sort of aimed at certain groups. And I always go back to hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which then lead to hateful actions. And I think that's the environment we're in, that people just, you can't stop with these sort of awful thoughts you have and then saying these awful words and not expect awful actions to take place.
Matt.
And that's the unfortunate environment we're in.
So at the end there, it seemed to me that Katie Tur had a producer in her ear chirping to shut Matt Dowd up. Again, there's a couple of action words in there that I think are problematic, but I don't think they rise to the level of being shit-canned by the network, because what did he say that was untrue? Charlie Kirk absolutely was one of the most divisive characters in this movement, in our society, in our culture, in politics today. He didn't even call him a white supremacist, as I've been calling him all day, a racist, an anti-Semite, a hater and an opponent of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Says it was a mistake to enshrine in the laws of the United States equality for Black Americans. That was a mistake, he said. Talked about Jews being too powerful and controlling things. Hateful thoughts lead to hateful words. Where's the lie? Which then lead to hateful actions. That is true. You think about something, oftentimes, not always, but hateful thoughts do lead to hateful words. And those words oftentimes lead to hateful actions or spur others. Sometimes your hateful thoughts and words lead others to hateful actions. Matthew Dowd is right. Matthew Dowd is right. Now, here's where he gets into a little bit of trouble, but I don't think it rises to the level of being fired. You can't stop with these sort of awful thoughts you have and then say these awful words and not expect. And not expect, that's the problem. Those two words, and not expect. Not expect. You can't expect this not to happen. Yeah, that's a problem. Because we live in a liberal democracy and we have the freedom of speech, and we should not be resorting to violence based on even some of the most disgusting beliefs. But should he have been fired for this? I've said more truthful but aggressive things about Charlie Kirk over the course of the last 2 days because they're true. They are irrefutable that Charlie Kirk is a white supremacist. Charlie Kirk surrounds himself with racists and white supremacists. The Jack Posobics, the Blake Neff, who was fired as one of the head writers for Tucker Carlson when his online pseudonym and profile revealed it to be just white supremacist, racist, KKK type shit that he was writing and posting online. Why would Charlie Kirk gravitate to these people? Why would Charlie Kirk surround himself with vile conspiracy theorists and racists like Jack Posobiec, who himself motivated and had goings on with the Pizzagate conspiracy that culminated in gunfire here in Washington, D.C., where a man attacked a pizza place for having kids in the basement, a pizza place at which there is no basement. Charlie Kirk surrounded himself with racists because Charlie Kirk was a racist. Again, it doesn't mean he deserved to be assassinated. It doesn't mean that his children deserve to be fatherless and his wife to be a widow. No, I have deep compassion for his family. Not putting it on. Not something I'm just saying. I grew up fatherless. Really getting raw today. It's not great. But we can't lie to ourselves about who he was. And I don't believe that Matthew Dowd did lie here. I hope he lands on his feet. Here's the headline from the Wall Street Journal. The conservative Rupert Murdoch owned Fuel on the Fire News Corp owned Wall Street Journal. This is their headline. Dowd no longer with MSNBC after on-air comments about Kirk. Here's what they wrote. Dowd's comments on Katie Tur Reports on Wednesday prompted widespread backlash and an apology from MSNBC president Rebecca Cutler. I don't know where the widespread backlash came from, probably from the right wing, probably from the Rupert Murdoch-owned properties like Fox News. But this is what the president of MSNBC said. Quote, during our breaking news coverage of the shooting of Charlie Kirk, Matthew Dowd made comments that were inappropriate, insensitive, and unacceptable, Cutler said. We apologize for his statements, as he has. Again, other than and not expect, everything he said was correct. Everything he said was accurate, spot on, truth. And if we're going to shy away from that which is uncomfortable but true, we're not doing a service to anybody.
I'd also be remiss if I did not acknowledge why that flag is at half-staff. We lost an incredible American today, a dear friend of mine. If you knew him, you love him. His name is Charlie Kirk.
In the wake of the killing, the targeted political assassination of Charlie Kirk yesterday in Utah, Pete Hegseth was among many government officials to not let a good tragedy go by without trying to capitalize on it, get a little attention for themselves. The President of the United States gave an address from behind the Resolute desk in the Oval Office of the White House, and the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, he tweeted this: a prayer for Charlie Kirk and those who serve, which is odd since Charlie Kirk did not serve, certainly was of war-fighting age at 31 years old, could have served, had the opportunity to volunteer for the Army, as Pete Hegseth did, or for the Marine Corps, as I did, and he did not. Another Republican fake tweet. But Pete Hegseth forced troops standing in formation with no retreat, no way to bow out, no way to opt out of the prayer, forced them to pray for racist, anti-Semitic, white supremacist, white nationalist Charlie Kirk. And you'll notice, you might notice from that tweet that I just put up, we can throw it up again really quickly, but you'll see the video that is contained in this tweet. There are at least a dozen black faces in this formation. One woman that I notice forcing to pray a Christian prayer in the name of the Son of God, to Jesus Christ, by not just their commander, but the Secretary of War, the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. Watch this video and let's discuss some of these absolutely illegal violations of the United States Constitution that are contained within the very First Amendment in the Bill of Rights.
I'd also be remiss if I did not acknowledge why that flag is at half-staff. We lost an incredible American today, a dear friend of mine. If you knew him, you love him. His name is Charlie Kirk. Taken by an assassin's bullet, unfathomable. The only assurance I can take is that I know he is with his Lord and Savior right now. He has heard the words, "Well done, good and faithful servant," as I know many of you will hear. And I didn't quite know what to do after that news with the rest of the day, but I know what felt fitting was to definitely come here and be with all of you. Not media, not anything. Just you don't do this for media. You don't do this for recognition. You do this because you love your countries and your communities in quiet ways that a lot of people don't understand. And so being here with you, with people who give so much, who put their lives at risk, and their families know it, is exactly where I should be and where we should all be. So if you would, bow your head with me and join me in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Lord Jesus, be with Charlie, his family, his kids, his community, and this country. Welcome him into your arms. Comfort them when we don't understand your plan. We know your will be done. We don't always know what that means, but we know it is in your hands. And I ask that you watch over all these men and women here who put their lives on the line. Protect them tonight, tomorrow night, next week, and the months ahead. Lord God, protect them. And we put them under your shield of protection. It is in your Son, Jesus Christ's name, we pray. Amen.
In your Son, Jesus Christ's name, we pray. Amen. No matter, members of this formation who don't have a choice but to be here, no matter if you're Jewish and don't believe that Jesus the Christ is the Son of the Almighty Yahweh, no need to object. If you're a Muslim and believe that Jesus Christ was just a prophet like Muhammad, no. No matter if you're an atheist or an agnostic, some kind of a non-believer, you are forced to stand here and participate in a Christian prayer said in the name of God's Son, Jesus Christ. Again, these are troops. If you didn't serve in the military, you don't know. They might be just looks like they're lackadaisical. What's the phrase? Lackadaisically. Why can't I think of the word? They're not just standing around. They are in formation. They don't have a choice but to be there. They are ordered to be there. They could be punished, non-judicial punishment, not like court-martial, but what we called in the Marine Corps NJP, for leaving, for stepping out, for disrespecting the Secretary of War, Lil Pete Hegseth. These black members of this formation who are forced to honor, to memorialize, to celebrate the life of someone who believes they don't have the brain processing power to think more critically than a white person, and the only reason they got their job is through DEI and stealing these black folks, stealing their position from a worthy, credible, qualified white man. The First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States prohibits an establishment of religion. And when you have a commander, a representative of the United States government, commanding these people to pray, bow your heads and pray with me, while he prays a prayer in the name of the Son of God, Jesus Christ, he's violating the very oath that he has multiple times raised his hand and sworn or affirmed his loyalty to. His loyalty, after effects of COVID, swore to support and defend this document against all enemies, foreign and domestic, while he stands there and is that very domestic threat to the concepts and the very letter of the law in this document. But the most apropos thing that he said here was that you don't do this for the media. You don't do this for the recognition. Because after all, that's what I'm here for, y'all. That's what good old Pete, that's what Leaky Pete's for. I'm here for the media. I'm here for the recognition. I'm here for the attention-seeking, clout-chasing nonsense of posting this prayer online on the Nazi Twitter. This offends me. Not as a non-believer. This offends me as a Marine. This offends me as someone who did take an oath and does take seriously my affirmation to support and defend the Constitution. A vow, an oath, a sacred, honorable pledge that I made, that I still hold to. These people use the Constitution as fucking asswipe. They don't care about the actual concepts. They care about what furthers their agenda. And our white Christian nationalist, Pete Hegseth, Secretary of War, the thin-ankled, thin-calfed, thin-thighed weakling, will stop at nothing at altering our culture. Forcing out, they're deleting the images and the contributions of black people on an almost daily basis from the internet of the Pentagon. Yet he's forcing black people to sit there, to stand there in formation and pray to a God they might not even worship, for a man who thought they were less than human, less than whites at the very least. Gross, un-American. Or at least that's what I'm trying to prevent. I'm trying to ensure that this is un-American. If Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth has his way, this will be the way forward. I invite you to this conversation. What do you think? You can comment below. You can also call the voicemail line 714-576-4054. Of course, as always, you can email me on the email line daily@dollemore.com. I love and appreciate you very much. Again, this is going to be a rough week, a rough month, maybe the rest of the year. Eventually, things will calm. Cooler heads will prevail unless more radical violence takes place at the hands of some conservative who's out for blood, out for revenge, out to follow the admonitions of the Jesse Waters and the Greg Gutfelds and the Donald Trumps and the Steve Bannons and the Sean Hannitys of the world. Until then, keep a lid on it. Love and appreciate you very much. I'll see you next time. Be genuine. Take care of one another.